Hello, my name is Amy Upham, and I'm here today to talk to you about the risks of horizontal hydraulic fracturing. Many of you may have heard of fracking. There's actually two kinds of fracking. One is vertical and one is horizontal. The vertical kind has been going on for quite a while. The horizontal kind has only begun in the 1990s. This is where the land is drilled horizontally. You can see the picture up above in the upper left-hand corner compares conventional or vertical fracking with unconventional horizontal hydraulic fracturing. This is often what people refer to when they talk about fracking. When the unconventional fracking happens, there is a fluid mixture containing sand and toxic chemicals that is injected with high pressure into the fissure in the shale. The natural gas then escapes from the shale for capture and use as a fossil fuel. So what happens right after and then shortly after this process? Right after the process, chemicals come into the air and water that were not initially put in. So you have the chemicals that were already put in, and then you also have the chemicals that come out. And the reason they come out is because there are metals and radioactive materials and hydrocarbons and all sorts of fun stuff in the shale and sediment itself. And so by blowing up the shale, it actually releases these into the air and water. There are 5.2 liters of wastewater produced for each well drilled. This wastewater is not able to be treated by municipalities. That was outlawed by the EPA just a couple of years ago. So it is stored instead underground in what they call wells, or you'll hear unconventional wells. So what could go wrong with this process? There's so many things that can and does go wrong. The first is that groundwater gets contaminated. As you can imagine, if any well leaks, and 9.14% of unconventional wells do fail, compared to 2.27% of those vertical conventional wells. And that can include things like, cement separating, or just general seals breaking in the well. Also, groundwater can be contaminated through pipeline leaks. So there have been 807 pipeline leaks since 1998. That's oil and gas together, but I thought it important to mention because it does include natural gas. Of those leaks, there were 306 deaths and 1,296 injuries. And because Buncombe County is considering a pipeline through the county, whether it's oil or gas, those potentials exist. The second big way drilling can go wrong is through surface water and air contamination. So trucks take up to 4,000 trips per well drilled. And in these trips, as well as in other ways that the wastewater is handled, there have been since 1998 in the 11 main states of production 21,000 spills of 175 million pounds of wastewater. That did not actually include Pennsylvania, which more recently started drilling the horizontal unconventional way, and it has had over 100 spills since it began. So, as you can imagine, with these chemicals going into the water and air, there's a huge public health threat that has been feared and now is starting to be proven. The EPA and Stanford University have linked the toxins associated with the process to groundwater near storage wells. So it's no longer theoretical, it is happening. These chemicals cause cancer, breathing trouble, and are linked with disruptions in endocrine systems. Communities where this drilling has occurred are experiencing mental health problems. We're going to go into that in a minute about what kind of mental health problems they're experiencing. But let's get into cancer and endocrine disorders. So One study found that in Texas found that cancer risk within a half a mile radius of a well is higher than outside of that radius. And the radioactive materials, they're also called norms. They can cause bone cancer. And then some of the other chemicals that are found have been linked to higher rates of prostate cancer that are also found within close proximity to the wells. And that was found in a separate study. So all of that is not good. Then we go to the endocrine system, and we find evidence linking the chemicals to thyroid disorders, low semen count, and then some developmental disabilities that are linked to endocrine system pathways like childhood obesity, but also learning disorders and things like higher infant mortality near the wells. So all these things are coming out, and as the baseline evidence is forming, more and more studies are being conducted and should be conducted before any more wells are drilled. One thing that not a lot of people talk about is the mental health effects, but I found a really good literature review of these effects. It was a meta-study, and they actually left out all articles that were not promoted by, but that were done by anti-fracking organizations. So these are all, public health journals, and they're reporting higher anxiety, poor subjective well-being, more days of work missed, which is interesting. And part of this, they're linking to this boomtown psychological effect. It's happened in coal towns. Typically, when a gas drilling company comes in, they come in, they drill. They're the ones that reap a lot of the economic benefit, and then they pull out. And there's a few men left standing to operate the wells and such, but the huge economic effects aren't seen by the community yet. Their landscape has been disrupted and their way of life. So they actually, Hirsch and his researchers are actually alleging that it's causing collective trauma, as has happened in coal towns. And that in those communities, like in Pennsylvania, they studied the Marcellus Shale region, people are experiencing feelings of loss and significant sadness over their way of life being gone. So if that all weren't enough to kind of give you pause about fracking, unfortunately, like many toxic waste sites, these wells are happening in communities of color more at higher rates, and also in poorer communities. And studies out of southeastern Texas and the Marcellus Shale region of Pennsylvania are showing that. It's not surprising, but it's just an extra piece of sadness. Now, here in North Carolina, fracking actually is not, unconventional fracking, I should say, is not in operation because there's some technicalities essentially with how it was put into place. So the higher courts, we're waiting from the state courts to decide on whether the current Oil and Gas Commission is even a legal entity and can regulate fracking. So no permits are being issued, which is good news for North Carolina, but it doesn't mean that fracking can't come here, or the wastewater can't come here. And so, as well as the natural gas, there are plans, as you know, most likely to build a 12-mile pipeline from Enka to Arden underneath the French Broad River. And then Duke Energy, I'm assuming it's linked with this plan that Duke Energy has to store natural gas in Arden in 2027. They put it off. They were going to do it sooner. My argument is, given all this evidence of, the health effects, the mental health effects, the infrastructure effects, and just in general, the way it changes a community, that we say no to such plans, because not only do we not want, wells drilled here, we don't want wastewater kept here and leaking. We don't want wastewater or natural gas transported through our county and ruining these beautiful mountains. We sell this place as a place to come enjoy the beauties of nature, and we really need to keep it that way. So, join Asheville City Council. They, a couple years ago, put a moratorium on unconventional drilling, and if Buncombe County joins that with a moratorium on storage as well, then we can have a safe and healthy community. Thank you so much, and that is my request of you today.